last question here. Do you think the classifications based on access and earnings, do you think that might change institutional behavior? And before you answer, sort of one big statement from me here, I think the fact, like it should just be said that ACE and Carnegie are centering the importance of earnings and employment as the measure of student success. Like it is actually pretty singular. I mean, I get it. It's, a couple directions in there, but it's pretty singular. I think that's really significant. I still frankly wonder, is there going to be pushback from faculty who are saying like, that's not what higher ed is supposed to be about? I still wonder if we'll see that. And frankly, ACE to me is always being super honest. I love them, but they've talked a little bit outside both sides of their mouth on this, right? On one hand, under Ted Mitchell's leadership, they've been very clear, like we want to focus on outcomes, but they also do represent the current interests of the current institutions at heart. And so when there have been moves that focus on debt repayment or whatnot, it seems to me they're like, I'm not sure I really want that. So I don't know. I wonder where this will land, but it seems to me, at least right now, that the measure of student outcomes being around earnings and by extension, employment and getting a good job is a really big deal. And it's one that I'm happy about, to be clear, but it's a big deal nonetheless that touches on a lot of conversations you and I have had since the start of Future You. And I don't know, will institutions push back or will they actually try to be better along this dimension?
Michael, just overall, I just want to say, I think these are great, the changes that have been made. I think it's a really good start. And just like the Carnegie classifications have evolved over time, I think these new classifications will evolve over time. So I do want to say that. I probably should have said that up front. Because I've been kind of, right, because I think I've been kind of a little negative probably in my comments here. And on this one in particular, on earnings, I do think it will change behavior of institutions. I hope not in kind of unintended ways or not in negative ways. So let me go back a bit first, right? Earnings outcomes are kind of a relatively new measure in higher ed, at least at the level of detail that we have now. It's probably been about a decade or so since we first started using them at a national level when the college scorecard was introduced. But I found when consumers look at them, while boards might be aware of them, they aren't widely used because they haven't really influenced the rankings until recently, right? As we know, US News a few years back started to use social mobility as one of the measures which started to move the rankings, as we know, of some prestigious universities that weren't so good on that front of social mobility. So like you, I'm glad that we're focused on earnings as an outcome because, as we know, college is all about the job these days to consumers. Cue up the mail we're going to get from a lot of people saying, oh, higher education is about more than the job. But if you don't have the job, baseline, exactly. So I'm really happy also, by the way, that they're adjusting it on geography because that matters for institutions that might be in rural areas, or maybe they send their grads, they send them to Memphis instead of Atlanta or New York or, San Francisco or something like that. But the other adjustment I wish they make is on kind of program mix. What I hope doesn't happen here is that colleges kind of do away with what might be considered low earning majors without thinking more about them. Teaching and other helping disciplines, or, why is our history major not high on earning? Maybe they could do what the University of Texas system is now doing and embedding kind of credentials of value into the degrees in the hopes of improving their incomes. In other words, I hope they do stuff like that to try to improve earnings rather than just say, you know what, we're going to do away with these programs. Because at the University of Texas now, if a history major gets a certificate in Tableau and that helps them visualize data, they could earn more. And I hope that's what this encourages colleges to do, to think about how earnings in certain programs are overall impacting their kind of ranking on this, or their classification on this, so that they don't just take the easy way out and eliminate programs. And I think that is the unintended consequence, perhaps, of this.
It's a fair point, Jeff. Just reflecting on that, I think about the post-secondary commission, Stig Leschly trying to stand up a new accreditor. The approach they've had, right, is like the ROI can't be negative. We don't care how positive it is. It just can't be negative. And so that's one way to think about it. I guess if you move to an ROI framing over time, might be another way for these classifications to evolve, I suppose. And, then in that context, you would say, okay, so this program that has lower economic returns, it actually should also cost less, right? So let's not charge $125,000 for a master's in social work. I'm looking at you, 3-letter name institution. No, but I think implicit.
It starts with U and ends with C.
Yeah, it's exactly. But I think implicit in all of what we've discussed to this point, Jeff, is will the other actors that impact higher ed actually change their behavior as well, right? We've got funders, whether institutions like NIH or states or foundations. We've got accreditors. Will they become a watchdog that occasionally bites now, or will they just use the student outcome metrics to really help institutions focus on improvement? Will students maybe even change behavior at all as rankings perhaps evolve in response to this information? What are your thoughts?